Inspired by sound.
Hello and welcome to another Inspired by Sound. This will probably be a little bit long because there's 22, I think, or 24 tracks to go through, but that's all right. If you're stuck at home, like me, I've had a few cancellations, I thought this would be an ideal time to have some fun. So let's go through this track, Take Each Day As It Comes, which is maybe a fitting track title given the current climate. But don't worry about all that. We're here to enjoy ourselves and listen to some music. So why don't we do that? So a bit about this track then. In 2013 or 14, I sat down one morning, about 9 o'clock, having been given a free drum kit the day before from Derek Lane of lanesaudio.com, linked in the video description, and he said to me, make something with this. So I did. And what came out was this piece that I made in about 5 hours, with a break for lunch and maybe a bathroom break or so, but basically a straight through production. And I was kind of shocked when I went to sleep and, you forget about what you've done the day before because it's a big deal. And you wake up and you listen back and you go, you know what? Not bad. Not bad, old chum. Not bad. So, as this is all hardware, a mixture of Roland SE88, Roland Fantom-XR, Juno G, Roland Juno G at the time, and a Korg X5 DR, I thought to myself, how can I possibly remaster this track, bring it to the modern era, because I don't want it to linger and be forgotten about and be purely MIDI based. So I sat down a few Sundays ago and I basically went through almost the whole process again. Not creation, but recording those sounds that are in hardware that I couldn't be without and trying to find software equivalents for them. And in the construction that you're hearing, this is actually the reconstruction of it from Logic, I think I've come quite close to the original. So much so that I do actually expect YouTube to send me a warning because this track is available to purchase from YouTube or wherever you want. So it wouldn't surprise me at all, by the way, if they throw me a little message saying, you're using a track from this person and you're in not trouble, but you're a naughty boy. So with that having been said, let's delve straight on into this massive, for me, thing. My name isn't Jacob Collier, so I don't do 768 track projects. Just 22 is big enough for my liking. Oh my gosh. So why don't we start at the beginning and go forward as we mean to continue. So what I've done is I've grouped this into 4 different lots, in a way. If you can see on your screen right now, there are 2 tracks, just 2, and you think, oh, that's tiny. There's a melodic track and a track that contains anything that isn't melodic, so drums and percussion and a rain stick and so on and so forth. And there's a lot in here that you won't actually believe is in here until you hear it, so let me talk you through it. First of all, we'll solo the melodic stuff, and I'll show you what it sounds like. Solo is now on for the melodic folder. Alright, so good. We'll stop there and we will go and do the same on the drums. And this time we'll do it with a metronome because if we don't, you won't follow along. Bar 1, beat 1, 144 beats a minute. And now we're all caught up. So yeah, let's take it forward now. We'll expand these 2 track stacks. Oh boy, they're big. Drums is expanded, melodic is now expanded. So let's talk about each and every product that I've used in here and why I can't play you some of them and why I can play you others. So when I was telling you about a few weeks ago on a Sunday afternoon, I decided I was going to resurrect this track. So I took the MIDI into Logic. I connected my Fantom-XR, which is one of the pieces of hardware I still do have left over, connected it via PDIF, so it's all clean and beautiful, digital. And I recorded in real time, so for the length of the track, the sounds that I could not find in Logic. Despite my vast sound library, there are still some unique and special sounds that I do not have in software. So, hardware saved the day. This very first sound, called Chords, from the SRX7 expansion board, Roland expansion, oh no, this actually isn't. This is a Korg X5DR sound, but I didn't have it in software. And it's the only sound that is not from the Phantom in this whole collection that's hardware based. But this was, apart from the drums, the entire backbone of the piece. So I needed this. And since my Korg is connected via the Phantom as well, it's coming in on the analog inputs, I just told it to send that straight to Logic. I have a very convoluted MIDI setup in which I can still access all of my hardware via the software. I can't address more than one piece at a time or on more than one track at a time, but I can. So I basically would put the MIDI in solo mode, I would hit record, it would send the data back to Logic, and off we'd go. It was a very strange day, and it took a very long time because there are a lot of audio tracks. So that's number one. Backwards piano is number two, and comes in fairly early. I'll solo this and stick the metronome on, and I'll talk about that because this is one sound I can play, and I had to make it because I no longer have the sound that this came from. This was a Roland Juno G sound, so I've had to substitute. And I think I've done a fair job. What I haven't done is, and I'm not going to, is I haven't linked to the original track in YouTube description. If you feel like a challenge, go find it yourself, because the version that's uploaded to Spotify and all these places is the hardware version of this track, and you can compare it with your ears to the one that you're going to hear in full, of course, at the end of every video like I do. So you can see what you think, and leave me your views in the comments. Did I do a good job at the recreation? I'd love to hear your thoughts. So this backwards piano is the Kawai X Pro that I use. You've heard of that before. So to get this sound, I had to do two things. I had to find a way to get a sort of backwards something or other, and I had to find a way to get a lovely delay that's close enough to the original that I was happy with it. So if I bypass the two plugins and then bring them in that I used, so the first one we'll bypass is the delay, Replica XT from Native Instruments. That's that gone. And that is on slot 3, or in slot 3 of Complete Control. Go back one slot and we'll bypass the reverb. And the reason you're still hearing a reverb, by the way, is because there's a common reverb bus, which I will talk about later, that you can hear what goes through it. So technically there is a reverb within a reverb. But that's the Kawai piano that you've heard before in a few of my videos. So now I'll put the delay back without the reverb. That's responsible for this kind of backwards idea. And then the reverb, which is actually Wave's Renaissance reverb, bypass that. And it does that. I think it's pretty good. Backwards actually is quite hard to achieve. I'm sure there's probably an effect that I could have used a bit differently, but to be honest, the way it fits in the mix is pretty good, so I'm not going to make too many changes to that. I think I'm actually done with this track now. I feel quite good about it, and I would be kind of sad to revisit it and mess it up, because, you know, sometimes you can revisit something and actually do worse to it than you actually wanted. By the way, links to all the products I used in the video description. As always, any questions, look in the description first. I might have answered it already. The next piano track is just piano and comes in quite later on, actually. Let's see if I can figure out where it is. About here, I believe, bar 41. Well, 43. There's a drum drop. There. And it's after the drum drop and the key changes up from F sharp to G minor. So these sounds I was able to resurrect because this piano is actually quite close to the Roland SRX 11 expansion. And I thought to myself, well, I can use that. I don't have the Juno G with that expansion in anymore. I sold it several years ago. So I thought, well, I'll try and bring it back in software. Thus I did. That's why this is quite a big track. And for those of you who can see, you can probably already see the different colors of the tracks. Some are audio and some are MIDI. So for example, if I go to an audio only track, here's these two tracks here, Melody Left and Melody Right are audio only. If I go up to this Rhodes track, that's MIDI. That's MIDI, and that's MIDI, and that's MIDI too. So you can see sort of the mixture I've got here. And maybe some of you are asking, well, why didn't you group all the audio together and all the MIDI together? Just because that was how it was in the original MIDI file. So I wanted to sort of preserve, just for my own sort of interest really, the layout of all these things. So the marimba is from Contact Factory. So that one is quite simple and there's no effect on it really. I think it's slightly panned over to the right and it might be attached to the common reverb bus that I talked about earlier. But other than that, it doesn't do a lot. It comes in during choruses, I think. So if I scroll through, I've got to find it. Where are you hiding here? Here we are. Yeah, that's where you're hiding. And if you want the metronome for that, it doesn't play an integral role really, but it does have a part to play. Quite like it. And if I turn it off and go back to 24 bars and play you the track, if I do the same by muting it, no, you see, if I do that, muting is a funny thing. I've got to uncheck a group here because I've got all the groups set to if something that I forgot to turn off and I'm going to talk about that. What I've done is I've grouped all the audio together and all the MIDI together. Right, there we go. Now I can, there we go. So after I'd recorded the entirety of this track into Logic, and it took a long time, I decided I was going to group the thing in 4 ways, as I said at the beginning, and I only got around to talking about 2 of them, the Melodic folder and the Drums folder. That's easy enough. But then to have other groups within those folders that can cross folder boundaries, I thought to myself, let me group everything that was once audio into an audio group, and everything that was once MIDI, or that is now MIDI, into a MIDI group, so that I can solo these and show you what is left over when I do that. And that's going to be fun. Once I've gone through all of these products, I'm going to do that for you and show you what it sounds like, because it's really strange. And I was impressed at the amount of stuff that I was still able to retain from the old stuff. Yeah, it's quite a lot. Quite a lot. So this Keyscape Rhodes is next. It doesn't come in until I think again the 41 bar mark, 43 bar mark here. Yeah, here we go. So it's soloed. Actually, I'll just play it. Here it is. It's kind of a helper after that drum breakdown for a bar or 2 bars really. So it doesn't do a great deal. It plays more of a role. And it does not play any part before this point. Now it also backs up the main chords that you heard at the beginning. And it's slightly offset, as you hear. Just for a bit of fun, actually. Not because I couldn't play it nicely, but because I wanted it to be like that. So now we'll go for this melody left, which doesn't come in at the beginning. Melody right comes in at the beginning, but melody left is an octave lower than right and comes in here. First chorus. And it's one of these very, very core parts of this whole ordeal. And it's another thing that I must ungroup. I've left the mute on for that, so that's all right. We'll do that. Mute unticked. There we go. Now I can mute this one melody. 24 bars. Mute. See, when everything is playing, this one melody by itself can almost get lost. It's the right melody that we're going to get to in a second. So it's important to have it there, you see. So, melody right. I haven't been explaining where some of these sounds have been coming from, by the way. Of course, the Fantom-XR in this case, SRX7, which is the ultimate keys board. It has a great amount of solo instruments on it. And this, I think the track, the preset is called Sinusoidal SRX, is another really, really key part of this entire piece for me. And this right-hand melody comes in at bar 1. Solo. So having that from the original hardware just gave it that kind of badge of authenticity that I needed. I'm sure with all the software I had, could have made this in software, but it was already there for me, and I thought, well, I'll use it. I could record it cleanly. It was just sitting there with my name on it. I was going to use it. Thus I did. And if I played this from the beginning without that sound, well, it's the wrong kind of intro. It's just not right, is it? It's like a hole. So, from the beginning again. Big beast. Harp slide. Comes in at bar 7, as you hear. This is something else I cannot for the life of me find in software anywhere. I can find far too realistic ones. That's fine. But I want this kind of old school, very non-round robin, one layer deal that I cannot seem to find. And it's kind of sad in a way. I think we've become so reliant on the most real instruments we can that we've lost some of that joy of that 90s sound, and it's hard to get back in software. Of course, now Chord just came out with the Trinity, which is early 2000s, and that's quite nice. There's some good stuff in there. But if you want this kind of retro thing, Arturia's not going to get you covered because they're all about the analog and synths and stuff like that. And Roland Cloud doesn't work for me because it's an accessible interface. If it did work, I could probably have resurrected the majority of the sounds that you hear today from Roland Cloud. But it's not an accessible interface, and as a blind composer, I cannot use it if I can't use it with my screen reader. So that's out, and it's a real shame. Because at some point I do plan to sell my Fantom-XR, and it's going to be a very, very sad day. But I need more money than I do this wonderful box of tricks, which is really unfortunate. So yeah, harp slide plays a key role leading in towards verse 1. And without that, it's just not quite the same. See, everything has its place. When I built this track, I could not believe what I was getting up to, and my brain was just like on fire. Do this, do that, put that there, do everything. And it all just came out, really. I had no control over the direction of it. The muse does what the muse does, and that's just how it is. I know writers also understand this when they just hammer out X amount of 1,000 words in a couple of hours. Well, that was me with this track. It was like musical diarrhea, if you will. It just happened, and it happened quickly, and it was very good. Orchestral Essentials 1 for this string line. This string line pretty much plays throughout the entirety of the piece, and it is filler, but again, one of those necessary things that without it would be not the same piece. So that's intro. And without, it's barren. These strings initially came from my Roland SE88 sound module, but because the strings are quite easy to get good, versions of in hardware or software. So I thought to myself, well, I can do this. The next thing down is this Renegade guitar, and I have. People kind of know it as the Louis Plot, really. It's a Roland sound that I've used in countless of my old hardware pieces, and I thought to myself, I could use it, or I could sort of give it a slightly modern day feel. So instead of pulling out the SE88 Pro, that I still have, by the way, but I decided not to in this case, I would take it from a software angle. So I did my best to see what I could do, and let's see. Where do you come in? Here, I think. Yep, there we are. So it's a slightly different feel from the original, and you will notice that, especially now that I've told you about it, when you go and hunt down the original version on your musical streaming platform of choice or somewhere on YouTube. Yeah, but it does still work, I think, in the context. Here we go. So it's quite warm toned actually. I like this Renegade guitar, Indigenous Renegade, and if you're interested in that one, as always, in the video description. Now this brass fall, I could rant about brass falls for a very long time, but I'll keep it short. In essence, I was finding it very hard up until quite recently to find a brass fall sound like this one anywhere in software. And I mean anywhere. I looked everywhere that I could. Several thousand sounds do I have. Over 100,000 sounds in software. Could I find a simple one of those? No, I couldn't. And at the time, I still couldn't. I found one purely by accident the other day in Contact Factory Library, and it's not full brass, it's trumpet falls. And there is also one in the, I can't remember the name, Session Brass, Session Horns Pro, but you have to hold the pitch bend down. So if I was playing it back from an original MIDI, there is no key switch that does this. You have to hold the pitch bend down at a certain angle for it to do that. So I could do that and record it and sit there for the duration, or I could find an alternative. And I have tried and tried and tried. And I'm sure that a few years ago I found one and forgot it because I didn't make a note of it because I'm stupid. So this one comes from the original Fantom-XR hardware. And boy, am I glad about it, because that sound is kind of iconic. And again, one of these sounds that is very hard to find in modern day software. Why? Why is it so hard? I don't get it. Very necessary though. Let's go back a few bars. See, into that, after that cymbal roll, you want that sound, and without it, there's no differentiation really between verse and chorus, apart from, yes, all these new instruments play the melody, left and right plays, and the backwards piano plays, but that just gives it a sense of, yes, something is happening, we're going up in the world. And I was very, very sad not to be able to find a simple brass fall. Ladies and gentlemen, if you know a library that has something like that in it, that's old like that, tell me in the comments below. Bass. Another iconic sound from the SRX-07 board. I told you this board had a lot of sounds in it, and the majority of the sounds that you hear from the hardware today come from this wonderful board, except the drums, because it didn't have very good drums. But that's okay. There is something about this clicky, wonderful nature of this bass that I just love. I've got a few-ish versions of it in software, but there's just something unique about this sound that I've always loved from the minute I very first laid my hands upon it when I first got Board 7 several years ago, probably before some of you were even born. I don't even know when I got this, but it's special. And yeah, it's a simple sine wave, but it's a bit punchy and groovy, and it's got wonderful glide. Just hear the beginning of that glide. Look at that. I mean, it's just so something. It's warm, it's tasteful, I love it. And without it, you can't have a piece without bass, not like this. Sub-bass in an R&B track is just one of those things. Gotta be there. Got to be there. So yeah. And that is all the melodic stuff. So there are, 12 melodic items here, or things of a melodic-ish nature. So let's get on to the drums then. This is something I can play again. This is a jazz kit called Greg Jazz Kit, and this is what Derek Lane gave me, and this is what started the entire of this piece, by the way. Everything else was secondary to that. So this is one of those things that plays a very important role in the piece. So let's see. I think, let's just listen. Drums are one of those things that got to come in fairly early. There we go. Okay, so this particular kit is bass and rim shot stuff. Very important. It's muted, stuff is missing. The next kit down is the same, but it's the hi-hats and cymbals and things from the beginning. Coming into the verse in 3, 2, 1. And yes, the hi-hat is delayed on purpose. I wanted to give that kind of laid back swing on this piece, hence the delayed hi-hats. Very important. mute it. As you see, important in its own right. So that's the Greg Jazz Kit, which is a free SFZ or SFZ, depending on your pronunciation of it, kit that is running inside a Sforzando plugin inside of Logic here. Very good. What's this next one? I missed the name of the track. Rain. Ah, yes, Rain. Now, Rain is good. And where do you come in? Oh, wow, that's gone far down the track, hasn't it? This sound is another hardware sound and comes from Roland's SRX-09 world board. Good sound. Yes, I have it in software, but not the exact one and not the one that kind of moves and pans around as you listen to it. I could have emulated that easily enough with an auto panner, but you know, I thought where I could, I'd use as many hardware sounds as I thought prudent to do so. So yeah, I could have used the Rain stick from Air Music Structure. I've got one in Symphony series products, nice as well, in the Percussion. So I had choices. Oh, we didn't do the usual take it out. So mute from bar 5. Cymbal swells, yes. And again with the Rain. There's a lot going on, isn't there? A lot of layers in this. A lot of layers. Thought you might like that. So, Percussion 1, what is this? I'm not even sure. Oh, okay. I am now. This is Roland's SRX-03 Studio Percussion. And plays a very key part in this. And I don't have these sounds in software because, as mentioned previously, Roland Cloud is not a thing. So, yeah. I'll mute it. Actually, I think this plays a part right in the intro as well. Yeah, there we go. That kind of small bongo type sound. So from the beginning, with it active, and then we'll go the mute way. Of course, you know the deal by now. Verse. And without. So you start to see how all these parts play a part in getting this piece to where it needs to be. Okay, now we have some percussion I can play you. This is MIDI again. Air Music Structure. Now, I'm not sure where this appears. Let's skim through here. It might be after that drop, actually. Yeah, there we go. So we have two different percussion pieces here. And the reason being is because the first one, if you listen to it, if I go back to about here, this is the first percussion from the Roland board. It's kind of in the key of F sharp, which is what this kind of original piece is in before the key change to G minor. So if I put it in context, you hear how it kind of matches the guitar? There's a part where the guitar and percussion actually play in sync. I mean, it's not exactly tuned to F sharp, but it's not exactly tuned to F sharp. So, but after that point where we switched to the G minor, it did not seem prudent to use that for much more than sort of auxiliary hits, if even that. So beyond that point, we switched to Percussion 2, where this happens. So originally, I'm not sure what I used, but it was something that I was able to emulate enough for my needs, so I've used whatever this is, structure. So it works. So that's why. So when I was making this, I obviously had that thought in my mind, and I thought, well, I can't use that. So yeah, it's funny because looking back at this piece, I see all the changes and all the thought processes I was going through at the time, but I could never explain them without sitting in front of this piece entirely, because it would be impossible for me to tell you what I chose and why I did so without playing it back. But when I play it back, I'm discovering, just like you are, the reason for my choices. And honestly, that's quite fascinating. I mean, I wrote this track, 6 years ago? 9876554. Yeah, 6 or 7 years ago. So it's a long time to forget. And when I was recording it, I wasn't thinking about that. I was just doing what I was doing. So yeah, I'm reliving and relearning this track, just like you are, almost for the first time. So yeah, Percussion 3, what do you do? I'm not sure. It's not playable, but there's obviously a reason for it. Ah, okay, I know what that is. That sound is a shaken hand tambourine from the World Board SRX9 again, and it doesn't play a huge part all the time, but it is necessary. So yeah, see, it's just one of those quick things that comes in. I don't think it has much more to do than that on the entirety of the track, honestly. And without it... sorry. Just to let you all know, the comma and period keys are not the M key. Just saying. Comma and period in Logic, by the way, for those of you who don't know, rewinds and fast forwards the track. In bars, so I hit comma or period instead of M. I had a bit of a silly moment, and yeah, so the track went away. Right, so the next percussion track here. Percussion 4. I think this is triangles and things, and again from Air Music Structure. So, I have to find where it is. Yeah, oh, it's tambourines and shakers and claves. So it's quite quiet there, but we can go from bar 9 and have a listen. Yeah, there's the tambourine. If I solo that part. And we'll do the other. Reverse. Mute now. No tambourine. No clave. That one isn't massively necessary, but it is still kind of useful. Percussion 5. Where do you come from? M1. This one, I believe, is triangles and go straight to bar 9. I don't think it plays a part before bar 9, so let's have a listen to this. Yeah, triangle. And in context, and without, no mute, with mute. Look at all that madness. Oh yeah, oh yeah. 23, percussion 6, what are you saying to us today? Structure again. It's claps. Alright, we can live with that. I think it's just every now and then. Nice reverb on that. I probably added that from the plugin. I don't think there's a software plugin on here. Yeah, that's all structures reverb there. So let me mute. We'll go back to bar 9, because it comes in at bar 12, this one. That's not the same clap. There's another clap below it. So I think it would be hearable there. So let's have a listen with mute off this time. See, it's quite subtle. You don't really hear it, but it's there. There is a more obvious clap down here, I believe. Another SRX sound. So this is from the Roland SRX5 dance board. And there's all sorts of stuff going on in here. Reverse cymbals, claps, bell trees, and all sorts of things like that. There's a big clap, you see. This is one of the key parts of this track, this track. I couldn't substitute this, not easily anyway. There's just so much stuff on this one drum kit that I thought, you know what, there's too much for me to even bother. So I'm going to use the original thing while I still have it. Thus I did. So let's go back to bar 2, where this thing comes in, and unsolo it. Right, so now you've heard that. When it plays again, I'm going to solo it and put the metronome on at the same time, and you can have a listen, and then we'll do the mute thing. And again with mute. So we'll go back. Mute. You can hear the rain stick a lot when this is muted, can't you? Now, remember that big clap right there? When I unmuted it just for that. See, it's quite quiet, no clap. Just a little one from structure from the track above. So there's a lot in this track. Unmute. Actually, go back a few. You can hear the bell tree there. 2 bell trees actually competing. 1 up, 1 down. Very nice. So yeah, a lot there. And Percussion 7. Is that what I just played you? I don't remember. Yeah, that's the last track in here. So that's quite impressive. So you've heard all of the tracks. I'm going to now collapse these. Actually, no, I'm going to leave them expanded because for those of you who can see, you'll probably be able to see what happens when I now enable the solo, which I unticked before. Solo ticked, there we go. So now what I can do is, because I was telling you about this before, I can solo purely the melodic stuff or purely the other stuff, the drums. Sorry, no, not that. We've done that already. I can solo purely the audio only content or purely the MIDI content. So let's start with backwards piano. That's MIDI. And before I do that, this chords track, I need to set that up as well again. La 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 la. I need to just add it to the thing. Solo ticked, yeah, all right, that one is done. Now it's done, there we go. So now these groups are locked together. And basically what I was doing, for those of you who cannot see, was going into the Logic Inspector and checking a box. And for each of the 2 groups, I had to check it on at least one of the tracks, and then every other track is locked. So I checked on the audio-only tracks so that when I solo, they will all solo together instead of independently, and again on the MIDI track. So if I go from the beginning and solo the chords track, it will solo every other audio track in the project. So all of that has come from hardware. All of those things that you're hearing. It's quite fascinating actually how much stuff I ripped from hardware listening back to that. Because again, I did it and then I forgot about the track for a while and I've come back to it afresh, with fresh ear, this fine day. And it's just really weird. It's really weird. So for the curious among you, there's 355 megabytes of audio here in 12 tracks. I just went off to have a quick look while that was playing, and wanted to let you know that. So we've come up to the drum drop, and we're going to do the same amount of time, but this time with MIDI, and it'll be a completely different experience. So from bar 1 up to about bar 41 here. Yeah, strings kicking it off. It's very different. This is all MIDI now. We're hearing just the MIDI sounds. it the drum drop, and here's the drum drop now. So there we are. Hope you found that interesting. And basically, ladies and gentlemen, that's kind of it. We're done. Oh, are we? I think I forgot the one last thing, which is a not channel strip exactly. It's a bus, this common reverb thing. And if I just go here and actually we can do two things with this. Mute. So if I play the track from bar 9, really, because it's the most important part. Mute it. I'm just going between muted and unmuted. You can't really hear it that much, but it is definitely there. And if I go and play the track from the beginning soloed, you can hear the things that are actually going through that. Very interesting stuff. See, some of the drums, but not very many. The triangle particularly, and the clap. If I mute it, it becomes a little drier. You can just about tell it's there. There you go. So, of course, that wasn't in the original, but the Roland reverbs are quite nice, and I thought to myself, I can probably guess what was going to a reverb, so I would have just added those things very gently to the reverb as well, and that's why I did that. So I made a common reverb using Logic's Chromaverb plugin. I'm using Logic 1048 for the curious, and so that's what I ended up doing. Well, we've come to the part of the show where, basically, I play you out. Again. So, as if you haven't heard this enough already, I get to say thank you so much for listening. Please do the usual, like, subscribe and share, and if you feel like ringing the bell, I won't complain. I hope you have found this look at this mammoth track interesting, and will stick around for more videos in the future, because there's always new content coming. I'm not one of these that says once every week or however many videos a week. I don't know. It's just when I feel the urge. So, thank you so much, and please allow this track to play you out gently, and I wish you a wonderful day. Thank you for listening, and take care of yourselves.